The Congressional Medal of Honor is the highest honor awarded to a member of the armed services. It's awarded to an individual who has demonstrated conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his or her life above and beyond the call of duty. On July 12, 2011, Sergeant First Class Leroy Petry, a native of Santa Fe, was awarded the Medal of Honor for his bravery in Afghanistan by President Barack Obama. He became only the second living recipient of this award for actions after 9/11. In September, we recognized Sergeant Petry on Capitol Hill with an event in his honor. Here's a clip.
And whereas the brave actions of Sergeant First Class Petry, as well as his modesty and selfless service, stand as the embodiment of the best attributes of the people of the United States, now therefore be it resolved by the House of Representatives, the Senate concurring, that Congress honors the service and sacrifice of Sergeant First Class Leroy Arthur Petry to the United States Army and his family, and encourages the people of the United States to recognize the valor, heroism, and dedication to the United States exhibited by Sergeant First Class Petry. Ben Ray Lujan, Martin Heinrich, Steve Pierce, Tom Udall, and Jeff Bingaman.
Sergeant Petry's father would tell him not to be a hero, but to simply do his job and come home safely. He did return home safely, and he did so because of his own heroism. He also was able to bring two of his Army Ranger brothers back with him because of that heroism.
During one of his 8, yes, and I would underline that, 8 deployments overseas, Sergeant First Class Petry displayed the most rare and unimaginable courage. We've seen the reenactments, as Senator Bingaman said. We were at the White House when we heard the account from the Commander-in-Chief himself. Still, it's difficult to comprehend the love this man possesses for his country.
It's truly an honor to continue serving with fellow service members, and I look forward to every day I get up and talk about the greatness of our armed forces and what they're doing both at home and abroad. So I thank you very much, and thank you again for having me today. And I'm almost in awe. I keep getting bestowed with such honors, and I have nothing to give back but what I can in my job with the military and what I can do in my communities. So anything I can do I'm humbled to do it.
What an honor it was to be part of that. And today that honor continues, as I'm proud to welcome Sergeant First Class Petry to the Udall Update. Sergeant Petry, it's really an honor to have you here on the Udall Update. New Mexicans in particular will be interested in this. You were born in New Mexico.
Yes, sir.
And you're very proud of that, right?
Yes.
What can you tell us about growing up in New Mexico, and what are your memories?
My brothers, my cousins, I had a lot of family there, so we hung out quite a bit and went to the Boys and Girls Club as a young adult. Both parents working long hours throughout the day, so after school we'd go to the Boys and Girls Club, and then we'd go hang out downtown in Santa Fe at the plaza, just riding bikes or playing sports at Fort Marcy Complex there, and just staying active and running around having fun. I started off high school doing great. A lot of pressure because I had 2 older brothers in the grade ahead of me, and there was a lot of influence at that time. I was getting into some trouble, fighting with other kids at the high school and having my mom come to the office. My grades were getting low. I was ditching school. I wasn't really concentrating on my education. And then that happened at one high school. Second high school, I thought it'd be a little bit different, and I realized it was all not outside influence. It was more of my judgments and my calls, what I was choosing to do. And so finally I transferred to St. Catherine's, where my father was coaching the girls basketball team. Okay. My brother had gone to school and graduated there. He had moved over from Santa Fe High, and while there, it was kind of my choice. I had asked my father if I could do that, just because of the fact that I had realized my grades were dropping so low, and that I knew my choices in life were to join the military. And I said, well, with the way things are going right now, they're not even going to accept me if I don't get things squared away. So I went to St. Catherine's, and I improved my grades throughout the year, the 2 years I was there. Made the Student of the Month the last month of the high school, and honor roll. So it was, the counselor there had put me in for the Bootstrap Award. I was volunteering at St. Vincent's Hospital and numerous community services around town, Habitat for Humanity. And I realized that the Bootstrap, back in the old times, well, the military used to have straps on their boots that they would pull to get their boots onto their feet. And so it was kind of like you're pulling yourself up like that. And I knew where I had to go in life, and that I needed to change myself, because nobody was going to change me. It was all based on my decisions.
And in a way, there's kind of a lesson for young people, I think, that if you're in a situation where you're headed down a path that you don't like and you're getting in trouble or something, that it's your personal choice to be able to turn yourself around. And that's what you really showed. You went from I think from Santa Fe High to Capitol High and then to St. Catherine's, and really made a choice to do things differently and got that award.
It was a lot involved with, I guess, somewhat pride, values, and morals that I grew up with, that I saw so many people go down that wrong road, and I knew that I wanted to make my family proud and not be one of those guys that's living at home with his family for forever, and get out there and start my own life and be responsible for myself and start a family.
Now, when you mentioned that your dad was the coach of at St. Catherine's, while you were at St. Catherine's, did he give you any advice about any of these things we're talking about, or did he give you moral support, or what? What role did he play there?
I think he did. Him and my mom had a really hard time. They're four boys, and wow, we were wild. So always fighting with each other, and I know how it is now, having a family of my own. But they always try to do the best for us, and my grandparents were big influences on my life as to good values and decisions.
Well, we'll leave some of those wild moments aside and not pry into those. But you said something to me a minute ago. You said something about when you wanted to make this change, that you because you'd made a choice in your life to go into the military. How early did you make that, and then tell us about the path as you got out of high school and how you actually got into the military?
I was interested in it since I was 7 years old. I knew that was something I wanted to do, and around 7 years old, and then just the influences of Desert Storm and Desert Shield, seeing all these service members go off, some family members go off, it just inspired me even more. I thought, wow, here these people are going for the entire nation, and they're not expecting anything in return. So it was pretty impressed by that. I went through high school. My grandfather, who one of my big mentors, was there's that pressure to go to college. Everyone wants their kid to go straight to college, but I knew I wanted to join the military right out of high school. But I kind of entertained the try of college and did a semester, and it wasn't working out for me. I mean, my heart wasn't really going to school at that point. It was getting into the military. So the fall semester was coming up. My father was at home. He's like, "Hey, didn't school start last week?" And I said, "Yeah, but I've already signed up with the Army, and I'm leaving next week to Georgia." That's about the first time I broke the ice to my parents, and they were like, "What?" At this time, my brother was serving in the military, and he had a different experience than me. He didn't really pick the job he wanted to do, and so his influence was like, "Don't do it, don't do it." But I said, "Well, I'm not picking a job that's not fun and I'm going to enjoy and love doing. Because once you find something you love and enjoy, it doesn't become work at that point. It's just go do it. And that's how I got enlisted, and the training was tough, but it was worth it.
And when you say the choice, you chose to be a ranger, right?
Yes.
From the very beginning. In your recruitment, you went in, you said, I want to be a ranger.
Yes, sir. I went in there, and they said they didn't have any ranger contracts. That's when I was going to leave and go to the Air Force, and he's like, hold on. And then he got on the phone, and I could see him back in the back of the office whispering, and he hangs up the phone. He's like, well, I had to call the Pentagon, but they got you a slot, and which I knew they had it, but they wanted to fill me in different roles, and one of them was a petroleum specialist, and I was like, I knew what that was. I was like, that's almost like a gas pump attendant. Not going to do that. I wanted to join the best, so I wanted to have that ranger contract, and if that meant waiting until one was available, I would have done so.
Yeah. And so you were really focused on that. You'd known about the Rangers. You knew what they were all about.
I did. My cousin was serving as a ranger at the time, and it was part of sort of like when I was going through high school and made the decision to turn my grades around. I looked forward and I said, hey, I'm going to set these goals, and here's how I'm going to go about achieving them. And step by step, getting to that end point was the biggest focus in mind, and that's part of where, now that I've had a lot of my military, and I've done some while I've been in the military, but one of my goals now is to finish off my degree and continue that education, knowing how important it is.
Did your experiences as you went into the military, it sounds like from your brother and others, you'd heard a lot about it. Were your expectations being met, or was there anything that was disillusioning, or what? How was that working out for you as you went to your ranger training and you moved into real military life?
None of my expectations were unreal, so I think all my expectations were met. They definitely pushed me hard, but having the camaraderie of the other soldiers around me, Rangers, to push me as well, and to mentor, and teamwork is just phenomenal. And that's what it is you don't really succeed by yourself, you succeed by your peers around you. And it's the truth in life, I guess, too, because no one ever goes through life by themselves. They always need help from somebody. And to have people to turn to and say, hey, can you help me on this or that? And there's no one's an expert in anything really, but it's finding people that are better at some subjects or whatever, that you could reach to them as a resource and say, hey, can you help me on this? And then also opening up your resources to others, I think helps improve the whole team as one.
Sergeant Petry, one of the things I think you've explained that maybe a lot of people that aren't in the military don't, and this is something they may not realize, is how much it is teamwork, and how you're trained to work as a team, and you rely on each other, and your brothers. I mean, the remarkable thing to me is when I've been to Afghanistan or been to Iraq or visiting the military hospitals, is how much soldiers want to be back with their team. And when they're even seriously wounded, the main thing they talk about is being part of a team. So that's something that's pretty special, I imagine.
Yes. Working with a lot of the severely wounded, or just wounded. In fact, I mean, I've seen so many of them recovery that I thought was going to take them a lot longer. Their drive, they just recover fast, and their main concern is getting back over with their team, and it's inspirational. And
that's the work you're doing right now. We're jumping a little bit ahead, so I'm gonna cover that part. But I know that you're now working with the wounded warriors. One of the shocking things to me is how many deployments you've had. You had 2 to Iraq,
yes,
and
sir.
6 to Afghanistan. And so if you totaled up all that time, how much would that be of where you're actually deployed out there?
They sound like a lot of deployments. It's about, I want to say, close to 2.5 years, but typically our deployments are a lot shorter than the year, 18 months that a lot of soldiers are doing.
The Ranger deployments
Yes.
are, yeah, yeah.
But the part of our deployments, why they're so short, is because our up tempo is so high, and you're constantly out conducting missions daily, just about, and it takes a toll on a soldier to do that much, and to ask them to do that for a year and a half, they just reach burnout.
Yeah.
So it was that was a big part, is the family, and knowing how much they sacrificed and they dealt with during my being gone on all these deployments. But I loved every deployment. It was great to go and be a part of the team and see the improvements and the actual positive things that our military is doing.
You mentioned another thing that I don't think people think of that much, but it's very much a part of military life, is that the families, Ashley and the kids, they're making a sacrifice too, and that's a tremendous sacrifice.
Yes.
And it's something that I think it's important that all of us know and respect in terms of the giving that military families. It's not just the person in the service. Tell us about the mission where you were injured, and the mission for which I was in the White House with you when the President gave you that Medal of Honor that you wear with such pride. Tell us what happened and what went on there.
It was I had been up. I usually go in and see which triggers are coming up on the meter and what we're looking at for operations. So I usually got up earlier, whatnot, went to the headquarters.
And we're in Afghanistan.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir, in
okay.
Afghanistan. And that morning I was up and there was an alert to go after a high-value target. And normally we don't operate during daylight, but because of the necessity to go get this high-value target, we launched a mission. And I remember I had walked into one of our chow tents, where we go keep all our food and snacks and stuff, because on previous missions due to complications, we got stuck overnight or so. And I remember, hey, I'm gonna put some extra stuff in my bag for some of the younger Rangers in case we get stuck, to kind of boost morale and whatnot, and keep them, I guess, nutrition rate up and whatnot while we're out there in case we get stuck out. But I walked into the tent and you lose track of time because the days just seem to run into each other. And I walked into this tent and it was decorated, I mean, top to bottom, with American flags and red, white, and blue everywhere. And I kind of looked around and I said, what's going on here? And there was a sheet cake on one of the tables that said, Happy Memorial Day. And I was like, oh wow, I didn't even know it was Memorial Day. We've been here that long already, and grabbed some stuff, ran out of the tent, and we launched the mission. As soon as we touched down in our helicopters, we were taking enemy fire. And we fought through that fire, and we were clearing into a compound. As we got into the compound, the lead rangers started to clear one of the buildings. I stayed in the courtyard and asked for assistance of another ranger to help me back clear through the courtyard. As soon as the other ranger, PFC Robinson, tapped on my shoulder, he said, let's go. We started to move. When we were moving, I caught him out of my peripheral vision. There was 2 enemy soldiers with AK-47s shooting from their hip at a high rate of fire, and I had got shot in my left thigh, which I thought at the time was just, hey, the bullet lodged in there, and I was able to continue running. I got behind a small building, which we later called a chicken coop. I don't think there's really chickens in there, it's just because of the size of the building, they called it a chicken coop. PFC Robinson was shot right below his left rib cage, and
He's the one that was assisting you?
yes,
Yeah,
he was right
okay.
behind me, one of our junior rangers, and he followed me behind cover. And at that point, I started assessing what we had. We were still taking high volumes of fire around the building. I said, hey, start doing self-assessment. Tell me what's wrong with you, because he was still conscious and coherent, and I didn't know the extent of if he had any injuries at all. So I checked myself, and I prepped a grenade, a thermobaric grenade. I threw it over the building toward the enemy. And right as that went off, Sergeant Higgins had run, which is another ranger that was with us, had run to assist us. And I was calling up on the radio the whole time, letting my command know, situational awareness. Hey, we're in contact, we need support, got 2 injured. And that's when the next thing I know is we hear a loud blast that throws Sergeant Higgins and PFC Robinson to the ground. And they jump up right away, and they're in shock a little bit, and they say, what was that? And I said, hey, they're throwing hand grenades. We're still receiving fire at this point. I said, keep pulling security on that corner. My biggest fear was that they were going to converge around the corners and just finish us off. At this point, I had sat down because my leg was hurting, and I was pulling security to my left with my rifle. And the next thing I know, I'm turning around to check to my right on my younger rangers, and sitting right there in the middle of all of us was a hand grenade that obviously wasn't one of ours. And I knew that
You could tell by looking at it.
yeah, well,
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
a pineapple grenade, which
Yeah,
we don't,
yeah.
military doesn't use those anymore. And I realized it as a threat to my junior rangers and myself. And I knew that if I had time to see it, I had time to react to it. I immediately reached over and I grabbed it. And then as I was throwing it, my hand opened up to a full extent, and I guess it went off right about that point, because I sat up and I grabbed my forearm just below the wrist, and it had completely severed the hand at the wrist. I can take off my prosthetic and show you. It looked exactly like that. It was flat, and I hate to say it, but I was in a little bit of amazement. I was like, wow. It was unreal that you see it all the time in movies, but you don't ever many times see a amputation traumatically like that.
This is real life. I mean,
Yeah, I'm getting the up close version of it, but it's I remember it so vividly that I thought about it. Why isn't it spraying? I know it must have cut some arteries, but the smell, it heightened my senses almost to where I could smell the burns, the powder, the dirt, debris that was in there, and it was pretty grotesque, but I could see the radius and the ulna poking up a little bit. They had been completely broken off, and the next thing that went into my mind was, well, you can't just sit here looking at it. You got to take control of the situation. And so I reached down, I grabbed a tourniquet, and was able to apply a tourniquet to my arm and get back on the radio, give an update to my leaders, check on my younger rangers. And we had a first sergeant that had come around through a different entryway, and he ran up to me and he grabbed me by my kit that we were wearing, and in an attempt to pick me up, and he said, come on, we're going to get you out of here. And I kind of batted his arm away and said, you're not taking me anywhere till you get those guys. And he, knowing that I was coherent and still alert, he figured, okay, that's the typical thing, is you don't want to go get your wounded right away, because if you take your wounded away and you get shot at, you're just going to cause more casualties. So if at all possible, you leave them in place till you defeat the threat, and then it's safe to move casualties. So he said, all right, brother, we're going to leave you here and we'll be back for you. I was like, go do what you got to do, I'm fine. And at that point, my platoon sergeant Steidel came over, and I was able to grab onto him and Sergeant Higgins, and we ran over to our casualty collection point where we treat our wounded and stuff. Walking in there, I see a few injured guys on the ground and stuff. The medics run up to me right away and said, sit down, we need to start treating you. And I know where I'm at, and still I'm looking out for my younger guys. I say, don't worry about me, I'm fine. Get those guys first. And they said, no, well, there's medics working on them already. So at that point, the mind said keep going, but the body said we're losing too much juice. And so I said, okay, I know I want to keep going, but I got to do the right thing and sit down. I'm not helping anybody if I bleed out. So they started cutting off my uniform to look for wounds and stuff, because I told them I knew I'd been shot in my left thigh. At that point, they started putting tourniquets on my legs, and that's when I realized the bullet had gone through both thighs, and it was unreal to know that, hey, there was so much going on, and I knew my guys were out there, and sort of like what we were talking about, the team and wanting to be there for them.
Right.
That was my biggest, hardest thing for me that day, was leaving my men during a firefight. And throughout the whole medevac process, they were carrying me over to the helicopter landing zone, and guys were running up saying, "Hey, you all right?" And my biggest concern is, "Hey, we're not out of here yet. Get away from me. Just go pull security and be ready for the worst." And next thing I know, we're flying on a helicopter. We're out of there. They drop us off at a airfield and said, "We're going back to support the mission and wait for a plane here." And at that point, 2 of my unit PAs were working on me, and as well as the other casualties that they had dropped off with us. And they had given me a couple fentanyl pops. Well, I took them off. I bit them, which you're supposed to suck on them, I found out later. I bit the tops off and I threw them. And he turns around and he says, "What'd you do with them?" I said, "I took them already." He kind of smacked me and he said, "You're supposed to suck on them. You don't get the medicine." So I did that, and they were going up and down the line, checking on these other soldiers, and I remember them coming back and overhearing one of them say, "We've lost vitals," on one of the other soldiers. And at that point, I hadn't known that we had taken any other casualties. But I thought it didn't matter who, but I thought it might have been one of the 2 guys that was next to me. And so I'm sitting there just thinking about who can that possibly be. And later on, I found out that Specialist Gaither Cole and Sergeant Roberts had come out into that courtyard to assist us as well, and another enemy combatant was in the other opposite corner and had opened fired on him, and Specialist Gaither Cole was shot just below his helmet and succumbed to his wounds later. And that was a big hit for me. And I have a memorial my living memorial, where I keep all my fellow fallen Rangers from my battalion on my arm, kind of live in their memory.
It's right there on a plaque. I can
Yes.
see right there. And so you've got all the how many names are on there?
15. There's actually the Global War on Terrorism on this side, and then I figured I got some real estate now, so
Yeah.
I've added it back to Operation Just Cause in Panama and Urgent Fury in Grenada, to
Yeah.
remember those as well. And it was it was kind of weird. A lot of people talk about heroism, and it's just doing the right thing and trying to keep composure.
That's such a compelling story, and we can obviously see why the president stepped up and gave you a Medal of Honor. Just shake hands with me here.
Oh, yeah.
I just want to, because one of the things you showed everybody is the arm.
it's
And
remarkable.
that's still, you have a lot of mobility here. You can shake hands. People saw you take that off. I know there's a story, one of your kids likes to work with you on writing.
Yes.
Is there anything you can't do with that you can do with a regular hand?
Well, the hand comes off, and there's multiple attachments. I have a golf attachment, a full set of cutlery knives for the kitchen, which I use a lot with the big family, and tools, open-end wrenches, sockets, you name it. Just about everything that I need for what I want to do, they've provided me. And if I run into something I can't do, the idea is they want to give you the quality of life you had before, or anything you want to do in the future. So they'll work with you and try to develop something to allow you to do anything you want. And it's just been phenomenal. I thought I was going to have a hook, and I was okay with a hook because I was happy I lost it the honorable way. And when they gave me this hand, I was just, it was like getting a new hand, and then finding out about the attachments, it's like a candy store. And I'm thankful for the technology. Unfortunately, it came at a cost of so many amputations, and the great news is that they're able to save a lot more lives now with the body armor and the technology and the helicopter medevacs, that a lot of these amputees and burn patients that might not have had life are now living, so they're adapting to it and doing great, by the way. A lot of them have a lot of resiliency and motivation to keep their drive is still strong.
Yeah. After you healed up and you got your prosthetic hand and everything, rather than retire or go into something else, you've decided to continue to serve. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
So could you tell me what you've been doing and who you've been working with, and why you actually do that?
The job I'm doing now, I'm working, still a part of the Ranger Regiment, but I'm attached to Special Operations Command, and they have a program called the SOCOM, Special Operations Command Care Coalition. And what they do is they're a kind of the umbrella group for all the special operations, your Navy SEALs, your Special Forces, Rangers, your Special Aviations for the Army, and even some Air Force. So what I'm doing for them is I'm a liaison on the Western region, taking care of all the wounded, ill, or injured service members and their families. So my part I love about the job is I've been through the recovery and the rehab, and I know a little of the ins and outs of the hospitals, and I've developed relationships with a lot of the staff and whatnot. So my point is to look out for their well-being and make sure that family, if needed, is brought bedside, and that they have places to stay while visiting their wounded family member and whatnot, and just try to really make it as easy as possible for them to focus on their recovery and either get back to their service or transition out of the military.
Those family members, those wounded warriors, I mean, some of them have had a tougher time than you have, I imagine, and yet you're able to reach out them and help with their recovery.
Yes, it was kind of ironic. The first wounded soldier I actually started visiting with on this job was shot through both his thighs, almost exactly where I was shot, through both my thighs. And the only thing with his was his had hit one of his femurs, where mine was a through and through gunshot wound, just tissue and muscle, and nicked a few nerves. But his family had driven up from Kansas, I believe, all the way to Fort Lewis, Washington. So it was quite a drive, and they were obviously concerned and worried about their son. And I remember meeting them in the emergency room, and he was getting x-rays and a lot of stuff. He had just arrived at the hospital, and they were a little under hysterical. Why can't we see him? Why can't we see him? Where's he at? We need to see him. And so sitting there talking with the family, kind of easing their pain, saying, hey, I think it kind of caught them by surprise when I shook their hand for the first time, and I said, hey, here's what's going on. Your son's doing this, this, and this. This is part of the process. I told him, hey, I had a similar injury. Your son's going to be okay. He's got the best medical in the world. I said, it's just going to take some time, and kind of put them at ease a little bit to know, hey, they actually told me, after talking with you, we know he's going to be fine. He's got the drive and the heart to recover, and he's doing great. I think he's back on a team over in the sandbox again.
That's great. Well, I bet that the soldiers that you're working with really appreciate your input and your stories that you're able to tell, and the encouragement you bring to the whole process. I want to try to, because I've taken a lot of your time here, end up, but on behalf of New Mexicans, I think we need to know a little bit. You know, there's the state question about red or green.
Definitely green.
Definitely, you're a
I'm
green chili
I'm a
guy.
green.
And do you like your green chili from southern New Mexico?
From Hatch.
From Hatch, and yeah, and you
Hatch.
like it hot.
Well, I used to like it hot, but I've been in Washington State too long, so I got to go medium.
That's great. That's great. And are you able in Washington State have relatives send you up chili and get chili and that kind of thing?
They try to. They try to send it now and then. So it's always, I mean, I'm ecstatic when I get a box of green chilies, and they'll send them up on FedEx, and I'll go out on the grill and roast them myself and peel them and freeze a bunch of it. try to make it last, even though it doesn't happen.
That's great. That is great. Well, let me just on behalf of New Mexicans, because I know so many have turned out to the parade that you did in New Mexico, and they've called my office, and I've read all the comments. Just thank you for your service to the country. I think all New Mexicans feel that you're a hero to them. What you described today and what you're doing for the country and what you're doing even after your injuries to be able to continue working with wounded warriors. And so we appreciate your service, and we certainly wish you and Ashley and your 4 kids the very, very best in your life.
Thank you, sir. It's been my honor. I mean, I only wanted to serve, and this is great for me and my family. But it represents all soldiers, veterans, active duty. So I never make it a point to not thank my veterans. I wake up every morning and thank the troops on the ground. Those who are out there still fighting for us. So it's my honor to be serving alongside with such fine Americans in the service.
Thank you. Real pleasure
Thank
to
you,
be
sir.
with you.